Okay, this is a video on putting a CV axle on a 1996 Ford Escort. Um, this is where you have a boot on your CV joint that breaks, and now it's cheaper. You can get online. I think it was $69 with shipping. Also, cost of the axle and the shipping. Comes as one piece. You don't have to worry about a split. Here, I'll show you what I got here. Don't have to worry about a split boot to try to put on. It's all contained and you put it on. So this is my attempt to do that. Thing is, one of the first things you're going to run into is that the spindle joint, spindle bolt, it's the manufacturer. What they do is they put a indentation in here that keeps it from spinning out. So you're probably not going to be able to do it by hand. So you're going to need an impact drill wrench, or you can do like I did and bring it up to a tire place and talk to the manager there, and he'll usually let you. He'll loosen it up. You can take. You can have your tire on, and there's a little cap that you can take off, and you can reach this spindle bolt and have them at least loosen it up for you. Hand tighten it back on and then drive it back home, and then at least you can get that off. The next thing you're going to need is this tie rod fork here to get the tie rod off. Here, I'll start showing a little bit on this thing. This is actually going to be up like this, and the tie rod is going to sit in that thing right there and here. And so there's a bolt that has a cotter pin that you'll take off the bottom. Now the next problem that I ran into is the thing was frozen in there, and I didn't have one of these tie rod wrenches, and you really need that to be able to pry that guy off of there. Also, you're going to need it to help pry the ball joint. You see the ball joint right there? This is going to have to pick up. You're going to have to take the tie rod off, and then you're going to have to pop the whole wheel here off of the ball joint. Now the other thing that you should probably do, because as you can see that ball joint has the rubber boot around it is ripped up, and also on the tie rod it's not in real good shape either, is before you start the project, go ahead and get those parts. I was lucky enough to find them at an Advanced Auto store in stock, but you have the whole thing apart, and so it's good to go ahead and have those new pieces that you can go ahead and put on. The ball joint, it looks like it's fairly easy. There's a couple bolts here. One is like an upper and a lower one that you just unscrew, and then that whole mechanism you just screw back on for the ball joint. The tie rod, I guess you have to worry about getting alignment once you put the new one on, but it's just this piece here. I believe you just unscrew this guy. I think if you leave this bolt here, that when you screw the other one back in, that it'll hopefully be in the same spot. There's a guy that has a video on YouTube that talks about marking it and then loosening it up one rotation and then putting the new one on and then tighten it back up that same rotation. So anyway, that's a good YouTube one that he has of actually replacing the tie rod and the ball joint. And those things are great, and that's why I'm trying to do this one, just because it gives you the confidence if you've never done this before, if you see a video of it. So back to the CV axle. The next problem that I got into, when you read the instructions, It doesn't even tell you that you have to take these bolts off of this bracket for the shock absorber, and it doesn't tell you that you have to take the caliper off. But it makes it sound like this should just slide right off, and the axle should just slide very easily back out. As it wasn't coming out very easily, I started taking things apart, taking these bolts off, taking the caliper off, and hitting on this and trying to get it loosened up. And so now I've gotten a gear puller that I will install on here and tighten up so that it breaks that bond. So hopefully that'll work out, and I'll videotape some more when I get to that point. Okay, here we are with the CV axle out of the wheel area here. This is about 3 hours of trying to get this thing out. This was a 4-inch puller. Using that, maxed it out. Ended up breaking some bolts, replacing the bolts. I didn't think I was actually going to be able to get it, and it finally, at the last second, when I was about to give up on it, it pushed through. So don't expect it to be easy on a car that's 14, 15 years old, that it's going to slide right out. These teeth in here that the axle fits into, they get kind of frozen in there if there wasn't good grease in there over the years. So also, while I was kind of working on that, I went ahead and put a new tie rod and a new ball joint down here. These were pretty easy to put in, so those are really needed. They were all ripped up. The boots were all ripped up on them. So alright, on to the next one, getting it out of the transmission. Okay, here it is. We've put the new axle on. I didn't really videotape on the inside because it really ended up not being too hard. With a pry bar, you can just pry it right away from the transmission, and it slid right out. And then putting it back in, you just kind of had to like work around with it and push it, but it went back in pretty easy too. One of the tricks you might want to try, you might have to do, is to try to get it back in this ball joint right here. It was easier for us to go ahead and take the bolts out of here, and then you can basically just lift this thing on easily and put it on the ball joint and engage it there. And then afterwards, then you got to push this thing up to get the bolts in. But it was easier doing that than leaving one bolt in here and trying to pull this thing down and pull this out to get it into the ball joint. So that might be a little trick you want to do when we're putting it back. As you can see, I've put back the tie rod back into it, and of course it's back into the ball joint. And I put a little grease on the teeth when there's past these grooves here. This past the grooves, there's teeth that slide in, and that's what was frozen up when I was trying to get this thing off. So I just put a little grease on the inside of this, and then also on the outside on the grooves, and slid it in. I mean, probably won't have to change this again for the life of this car, but just did it just because it probably should have been done before. Anyway, that's about it. Wish you a lot of luck with doing it yourself. Thanks. Bye.